Let's get to it. Number 12, the Hypogeum of Saqqara, Malta. If you want to survive an F5 tornado, you grab a flashlight and go down into a modern concrete basement, maybe 10 feet below the surface. But humanity's ancient ancestors didn't dig 18 stories into solid, unyielding bedrock just to avoid property taxes. They were forced underground by an unknown, terrifying threat. These 12 ancient underground bunkers completely defy modern physics and structural engineering. So, were they built to survive a localized disaster or a total global reset? A viewer recently commented, if they hid underground, where are the bodies? Where's the writing? Good question. We aren't just looking at empty dirt holes today, we're looking at the mangled bones and etched warnings they left behind. And we are starting in Malta, at the Hypogeum of Saqqara. This isn't just a cave, it is a multi-level megalithic complex mathematically carved into solid coralline limestone. And it wasn't empty. Excavators pulled out the splintered, traumatized skeletons of 7,000 humans, many possessing severely elongated, anomalous skulls. Beside these bones were intricate spirals and hexagons painted in red ochre, a heavy iron oxide pigment that resists chemical decay. But here's the forensic physics flex. The deepest level, known as the oracle chamber, is a mathematically perfect acoustic resonance chamber. If a standard male voice speaks inside this specific room, the ambient space resonates at exactly 110 hertz. We know from modern clinical EEG scans that 110 hertz actively alters human brainwaves, shifting the prefrontal cortex into a deep, paralyzed trance state, altering localized blood flow in the brain. Mainstream anthropologists will smile condescendingly and tell you this was simply a peaceful subterranean burial temple for Neolithic farmers who just liked the echo. But that completely violates the acoustic physics of the structure. Primitive farmers don't accidentally carve dense limestone to exact 110 hertz resonance tolerances. They built a high-tech acoustic bunker, and 7,000 people died inside it. But if you think dying in a localized resonant frequency chamber is grim, wait until you see the horrifying 1,000-pound security system waiting for us in Turkey. Number 11. Derinkuyu's Deep Morgues, Turkey. If you lock the deadbolt on your front door tonight, a 1-inch cylindrical steel pin slides into the wooden frame to keep intruders out. To breach it, a standard police SWAT team just needs a 50-pound kinetic battering ram and 2 seconds of applying force. But in Derinkuyu, a massive 18-story underground city in Turkey capable of holding 20,000 people, the doors are solid stone wheels weighing over 1,000 pounds. And here's the terrifying kicker. They lack external handles. They can only be rolled shut and locked from the inside. For decades, casual tourists have been told Derinkuyu is just a sprawling, empty subterranean village. It isn't. The deepest, most suffocating levels of this complex contain dedicated morgues and burial pits. Think about the claustrophobic logic of this situation. A human body begins to putrefy within 48 hours, releasing highly toxic, flammable gases like putrescine and cadaverine. You absolutely do not bury rotting corpses in your own unventilated underground living room unless opening that massive 1,000-pound stone door to go outside means instant, agonizing death. To force humans to cohabitate with decomposing flesh, the surface cataclysm had to be so lethal, whether from a 1,000-degree thermal radiation burst or a hypertoxic atmosphere, that staying sealed inside the suffocating earth was the only mathematical option for survival. Standard history textbooks claim early Christians casually dug out this massive bunker with weak bronze pickaxes to hide from Roman tax collectors. But bronze has a Brinell hardness of just 100, while volcanic tuff will splinter it into dull, useless shards within hours. The sheer cubic tonnage of removed rock suggests industrial excavation. They weren't hiding from guys in sandals, they were hiding from a localized apocalypse. And speaking of being burned off the face of the earth, let's look at the thermal nightmare found in a Nevada cave. Number 10. Lovelock Cave, Nevada, USA. If you accidentally leave a frozen pizza in a 200 degrees Celsius kitchen oven for 3 hours, you don't get dinner, you get a localized smoke event that will trigger every ceiling alarm in your house. Fire requires 3 things: oxygen, fuel, and exhaust. If you start a massive fire inside an enclosed space without a chimney, the fire consumes its own oxygen and suffocates itself. Yet, in Lovelock Cave, Nevada, we see thermodynamic evidence of a blaze so impossibly intense it defied basic campfire physics. Deep inside this pitch-black cavern, early 20th century guano miners uncovered dozens of massive human skeletons, some reportedly towering over 7 feet tall with distinct red hair. But the forensic smoking gun isn't just the bone length, it's the savage thermodynamics of the cave walls. The entrance of Lovelock Cave is covered in extreme heat vitrification and deep scorch marks that burn from the outside in. To permanently scar limestone into black glass, you need a sustained thermal load exceeding 900 degrees Celsius. These towering humans didn't die of old age, and they didn't peacefully fall asleep. They retreated into the darkest recesses of the Earth, only to be flash-baked alive by an external high-velocity thermal event that forced 900-degree plasma flames straight down their throats. Mainstream archaeologists confidently assert that local Native American tribes built simple brush fires at the cave entrance to smoke out rival factions. But brush fires burn at barely 400 degrees Celsius and exhaust their heat straight up into the open atmosphere. They do not project superheated plasma horizontally into a cavern to vitrify rock. The math doesn't align with a campfire. But if humanity's giant ancestors were being incinerated, where did the regular humans hide their most precious data? Let's check the Middle East. Number 9. The Dead Sea Scrolls Caves, Qumran, Israel. If your house catches on fire or a Category 5 hurricane is bearing down on your city, you don't grab your flat-screen TV or your toaster. You grab your birth certificate, your computer hard drive, and your family photos, and you lock them in a fireproof, waterproof safe. Human psychology inherently prioritizes the preservation of data over physical comfort during an extinction event. When the end comes, we hide our records in the dark. This brings us to Qumran Caves in Israel, the desolate resting place of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This directly answers this question, where is the writing? When the Roman war machine was systematically obliterating Judea, the Essenes didn't try to build a stronger stone wall. They took their most sacred, historically vital texts, sealed them inside airtight clay jars, and buried them deep within highly inaccessible, thermally stable cave systems. By maintaining a constant internal humidity of roughly 30% and a temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, these subterranean vaults completely bypassed the biological degradation of parchment. This isn't just a religious anomaly, it is an undeniable, historically verified forensic precedent. When an apocalyptic reset arrives, a technologically outgunned civilization will inherently weaponize cave systems as subterranean hard drives to preserve their legacy. The textbook narrative paints the Essenes as simple desert hermits who happened to casually lose their library in the dirt, but this was a calculated, mathematically precise archival protocol executed under extreme duress. They knew the surface world was over, but while the Essenes hid from Roman swords, the victims in our next underwater abyss were hiding from an instantaneous, planet-shattering flood. Number 8. The Sac-Actun Black Hole Caves, Mexico. If you drop a standard concrete cinder block into a backyard swimming pool, it displaces exactly its own volume in water, causing a microscopic, unnoticeable rise in the water level. But if a 2-mile-wide comet impacts the North American ice sheet, it instantly vaporizes billions of tons of glacial ice, initiating a catastrophic physical sequence called Meltwater Pulse 1b. Sea levels don't rise a few inches over centuries, they surge violently, swallowing whole continents in a matter of weeks. Deep beneath the Yucatan Peninsula lies Sac-Actun, the largest underwater cave system on Earth. It is a pitch-black, entirely submerged labyrinth. Penetrating its depths, modern scuba divers equipped with high PSI oxygen tanks and specialized dive computers made a horrifying discovery: human skeletons. Most notably, the remains of a teenage girl dubbed Naya, resting perfectly intact in a submerged chamber called the Black Hole. Carbon dating puts her violent death at exactly 13,000 years ago. This date is the forensic bullseye. It perfectly aligns with the Younger Dryas meteor impact hypothesis. Naya didn't drown while casually swimming. The geological sediment proves she was already living deep inside the cave, hiding from a surface world gone mad, when the oceans suddenly swallowed the Earth and flooded her bunker in a matter of minutes. Mainstream scientists claim she simply fell into a dry pit by accident while blindly looking for drinking water, but that ignores the shattered, pulverized animal bones and megafauna deposited right next to her by massive high-velocity water currents. It wasn't a clumsy fall, it was an extinction-level drowning event. But if you think a flooded Mexican cave is mysterious, wait until you hear the deafening engineered roar of our next subterranean puzzle. Number 7. Chavin de Huantar, Peru. If you flush your bathroom toilet, the water moves through PVC pipes using gravity and basic fluid dynamics. Modern civil engineers use exact downward slopes and P-trap shapes to prevent the sound of rushing water from echoing back into your house. But high in the freezing Peruvian Andes, ancient builders didn't just understand fluid dynamics, they weaponized it to create a terrifying subterranean acoustic machine. Beneath the ruins of Chavin de Huantar lies an absolute nightmare of a labyrinth, entirely devoid of natural light. Deep inside sits the Longyou monolith, a towering granite dagger, heavily etched with complex, almost alien iconography. But the true physics flex is the architecture itself. The site is built over a network of subterranean canals. During the rainy season, millions of gallons of water are forced through these stone arteries. The channels are precisely tapered, compressing the water flow to exponentially increase its velocity, creating a massive hydraulic jump. This generates a deafening low-frequency roar that mimics the growl of a massive jaguar. The acoustic energy literally shakes the granite floors at a specific resonance, forcing the human body into a state of intense physiological dread, elevated heart rate, and sensory overload. Orthodox historians will tell you this was just a primitive, hallucinogenic drug temple where painted priests tricked gullible peasants with funny noises. But structural engineers look at the exact tapering of the hydrocanals and say it is a highly advanced cast geopolymer subterranean hydroacoustic power plant. Which tribe are you in? Let me know in the comments. Because while Chavin was built to aggressively channel water, our next megalithic site was intentionally buried under mountains of solid dirt. Number 6. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Imagine you spend 30 years building a beautiful 5,000 square foot luxury home. The day after you finish installing the roof, you hire a fleet of heavy dump trucks to pour 50,000 tons of dirt, gravel, and trash directly on top of it, burying it completely. You would be considered legally insane. Yet, this is exactly what happened at the most important archaeological site in human history. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey features massive, perfectly carved T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons each. They're covered in the world's oldest known pictographic writing, predating the invention of the wheel by thousands of years. But the forensic anomaly isn't just the sheer tonnage of the megaliths, it is the stratigraphy of the soil above them. Core samples prove that Göbekli Tepe wasn't buried by natural wind erosion or a slow accumulation of dust over millennia. It was intentionally and systematically backfilled by its own builders. They hauled millions of cubic feet of refuse, limestone rubble, and sediment to completely entomb their masterpiece. Why? You do not erase a megalithic city out of boredom. You bury a city because an overhead satellite-level threat, like a cyclical comet shower or a coronal mass ejection, is about to glass the surface of the planet. And dense dirt is the ultimate radiation shield. The mainstream textbook excuse is that hunter-gatherers experienced a cultural shift and decided to bury their temple as a ceremonial goodbye. This is a blatant insult to basic thermodynamics and human labor economics. Humans burning 3,000 calories a day foraging for wild berries don't waste precious energy moving mountains of dirt for a ritual. They were hiding their history. And speaking of hiding history, let's look at the metallic library locked deep in the Amazon. Number 5. The Cave of the Tejas in Ecuador. If you take a heavy-duty blowtorch to a 24-karat gold ring, it will begin to melt into a glowing puddle at exactly 1,064 degrees Celsius. Gold is exceptionally malleable, highly dense, and incredibly resistant to oxidation, making it the perfect elemental medium to store information that you want to survive for 10,000 years. If you wanted to survive a reset, you wouldn't write on flimsy paper. You would etch your data onto indestructible metal. Enter the Cave of the Tejas, a monstrous subterranean system located deep in the Ecuadorian Amazon. When explorer Juan Maurice and later NASA astronaut Neil Armstrong ventured into the suffocating darkness, they didn't just find natural stalactites, they documented massive, perfectly cut stone blocks joined at flawless 90-degree angles that rival modern laser cutting capabilities. But the real prize was what local indigenous tribes claimed was hidden further down, the legendary metallic library. Eyewitnesses described a vast underground vault containing thousands of sheets of pure gold, all laser-etched with an indecipherable ancient script, flanked by the skeletal remains of giants. Gold doesn't corrode. A library of gold plates bolted inside an artificial cave is the ultimate physics-proof fallout shelter for a highly advanced civilization's historical database. Mainstream academics outright reject the metallic library as a total fabrication, claiming the perfectly square cave blocks are just natural geological fracturing. But limestone does not naturally fracture into perfectly level, load-bearing 90-degree corners. The structural geometry is a statistical impossibility. But if you want to talk about impossible geometry, wait until we examine the 100-ton laser-cut boxes buried beneath the Egyptian desert. Number 4. The Serapeum of Saqqara, Egypt. If a modern industrial machinist wants to mill a block of steel to be perfectly flat, they use a multi-million-dollar CNC machine. To verify that absolute flatness, they use an optical flat and a monochromatic light. If any light escapes beneath the edge, the surface is imperfect. To achieve this level of micron-perfect flatness on hard igneous rock requires diamond-tipped abrasives and immense sustained mechanical pressure. Beneath the scorching sands of Egypt lies the Serapeum of Saqqara, a claustrophobic network of subterranean tunnels holding 24 solid granite boxes. Each box weighs an incomprehensible 100 tons. The lids alone weigh 30 tons. When structural engineers brought precision straightedges into these dark, suffocating tunnels, they found that the inside surfaces of these boxes are laser flat to within 2/10,000ths of an inch. They are polished to a perfect glassy mirror finish. The granite was quarried from Aswan, over 500 miles away. Dragging 100-ton blocks of granite through the desert and lowering them into pitch-black tunnels with zero clearance is a logistical nightmare that completely defies the tensile strength of hemp rope and wooden rollers. The mainstream excuse? Dynastic Egyptians chipped away at these boxes with soft copper chisels to serve as tombs for sacred Apis bulls. But here is the fatal flaw. The hieroglyphic writing on the outside of the boxes is scratched on poorly, looking like pathetic, drunken graffiti compared to the perfection of the box itself. Did the dynastic Egyptians build them for bulls, or did they find a high-tech underground bunker and just scratch their names on the hardware? Which tribe are you in? Tell me below. Because the load-bearing math in our next cavern puts modern computers to shame. Number 3. The Longyou Caves, China. If you want to dig a modern subway tunnel under New York City, you use a massive, multi-million-dollar tunnel boring machine. As you dig, structural engineers rigorously calculate the exact compressive strength of the overhead rock, installing steel-reinforced pillars every few feet to prevent thousands of tons of dirt from collapsing onto the workers. Excavating underground requires aggressive, constant load-bearing math. Yet in the Zhejiang province of China, we find the Longyou Caves, 24 massive hand-carved subterranean caverns stripped out of solid siltstone. We are talking about the removal of nearly 1 million cubic meters of dense rock. The forensic anomaly here is the absolute structural perfection. The pillars supporting the ceilings are distributed using complex load-bearing physics that perfectly balance the immense tension of the rock above. The cavern walls are angled and grooved with such strict uniformity that it suggests a mechanized, repetitive milling process. And here is the terrifying part. There is zero evidence of fire, soot, or smoke damage on the ceilings. How did they calculate rock tension and mine 1 million cubic meters of stone in pitch-black darkness without using torches for light? Mainstream historians shrug and suggest ancient farmers dug it out with primitive iron picks to harvest minerals, but digging blindly in the dark without a ventilation system or mathematical load-bearing calculations guarantees a fatal, highly crushing cave-in. They didn't dig it blindly. They possessed advanced excavation tech we refuse to acknowledge. And speaking of advanced airflow engineering, let's crawl into the suffocating tunnels of Europe. Number 2. The Erdstall Tunnels, Europe. Modern HVAC systems use complex fluid dynamics to push breathable air through massive office buildings. If you miscalculate the static pressure or duct size, the air stagnates, heavy carbon dioxide builds up, and the occupants quietly suffocate at their desks. Designing a functional underground ventilation system without massive visible surface vents is a brilliant engineering feat. Stretching across Bavaria and Austria is a terrifying, claustrophobic network of subterranean passages known as the Erdstall tunnels. These aren't spacious bunkers, they are painfully narrow, forcing humans to crawl on their bellies in pitch blackness. But the absolute physics flex of the Erdstall system is the inclusion of the Schlupf, or slip hole. These are extreme choke points that connect different tunnel levels, barely large enough for a human to squeeze through. Forensically, these slip holes act as perfect atmospheric pressure valves. They restrict and manipulate the fluid dynamics of airflow to maintain a breathable climate deep underground, trapping heavier toxic gases in lower sumps while preserving clean oxygen in higher chambers. This is advanced Stone Age HVAC engineering. Textbooks casually dismiss these as medieval storage cellars or fun hiding spots from local bandits, but you don't carve a perfectly round 15-inch slip hole through solid bedrock just to store potatoes, and you don't engineer complex thermodynamic air valves to hide from bandits for an afternoon. They were built for prolonged survival against a toxic surface atmosphere. But all of these sites pale in comparison to the heavily guarded secret hiding in the American Southwest. Number 1. The Grand Canyon Citadel, USA. If you fly a commercial drone near a major international airport, the FAA will track your GPS, hit you with massive fines, and potentially throw you in federal prison. Airspace is highly regulated to prevent catastrophic collisions. But when the U.S. government completely restricts airspace over a barren, entirely unpopulated patch of desert canyon, you have to ask, what exactly are they trying to stop us from seeing from above? This brings us to our ultimate payoff, the Grand Canyon Citadel. On April 5, 1909, the Arizona Gazette published a massive, highly detailed report stating that an explorer funded by the Smithsonian Institution had discovered a colossal underground citadel carved into the sheer rock walls of the Grand Canyon. The engineering was staggering. The cavern was purportedly large enough to comfortably house 50,000 people. But the true bombshell wasn't the sheer excavated volume. The report explicitly stated that they found rows of mummified human bodies, advanced copper weaponry, and walls covered in intricate hieroglyphic writing that heavily resembled Egyptian text.
We are talking about physical, verifiable proof of a massive subterranean survival bunker built by an advanced global civilization right in the heart of North America. The Smithsonian, predictably, aggressively denies the entire event ever happened, claiming it was just a 1909 newspaper hoax to sell copies. But here is the brutal forensic reality. Today, that exact specific area of the Grand Canyon is designated as a strict, heavily enforced FAA no-fly zone. You cannot hike there, and you cannot fly a helicopter over it. It is the ultimate proof that these global reset bunkers are real. They are filled with the bodies and writings of our ancestors, and they are actively being hidden by the establishment. And if you think the Grand Canyon is the only massive cavern hiding a dark secret, wait until you see the absolute destruction in our bonus location.
If you take a standard sledgehammer and smash it against a granite boulder, you will expend roughly 200 joules of energy to chip away a tiny, jagged fraction of the rock. To carve out massive underground halls, you need high explosives or heavy-duty diamond drill bits. You cannot simply politely ask the rock to disappear. Deep in the Anhui province of China, the Huashan Caves offer a forensic nightmare. Discovered entirely by accident by a local farmer, this network features 36 massive underground chambers dug entirely by hand. The physics flex here is the excavated volume. To create these caverns, the builders had to extract over 4.8 million cubic feet of solid stone. Yet there is not a single historical record of this project anywhere in Chinese dynastic history. Even more terrifying, the millions of tons of excavated rock are nowhere to be found outside the cave. It simply vanished. You cannot hide 4.8 million cubic feet of debris without modern dump trucks and massive logistics chains. Mainstream academics claim local peasants chipped it out for gravel. But peasants don't vaporize millions of tons of stone without leaving a single trace or taking credit. The rock wasn't chipped, it was pulverized and extracted using a technology we can't comprehend. If you want to arm yourself with the hard science to see through the mainstream lies, join the Oddly Explained network. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and never look at a textbook the same way again.